Ann Coulter was dropped as a keynote speaker for WorldNet Daily's September Taking America Back conference because of her plan to address an event titled HOMOCON, sponsored by GOProud. A number of articles have appeared on WorldNet Daily's site. WorldNet Daily was started by Joseph Farah. Two of the articles, one written by Joseph Farah and the other by David Kupelian, asking the question, why is it that a number of conservatives have stayed away from the homosexual issue? They don't speak out very much on it. One of the things that caught a lot of people's attention was Glenn Beck on Bill O'Reilly's show on the Fox network, who said that homosexual marriage, it's really no big deal. It doesn't affect me personally. This was a similar thing that took place regarding abortion. People want to have abortions. It doesn't affect me personally, so I don't need to be that concerned about it. But homosexual marriage does affect all of us personally. It'll be a redefinition of marriage for us and our children. And you cannot stop with homosexual marriage. The issue of polygamy, bigamy, and other types of relationships could come down the pike because of the arguments put forth in the judge's decision in the Proposition 8 decision. Now, what David Kupelian and Joseph Farah were concerned about is that ostensibly conservative, even Christian people, refuse to talk about this particular issue. And the biggest offender of this just lately was Ann Coulter. Ann Coulter was invited to speak, and she was going to speak at an event called HOMOCON, and this was sponsored by the homosexual Republican group called GOProud. Now, I was at the CPAC meeting up in Washington, D.C. This winter, and there was a great deal of controversy because GOProud had a table, was one of the sponsors there at CPAC. And this, to me, was the camel's nose in the tent, looking for legitimacy for their particular worldview. Now, I have a personal interest in this in a couple of ways. I'm friends with Joseph Farah. We've had him speak at one of our conferences, and I have been invited to speak at the Taking America Back conference, which will be in Miami, Florida, September 16th through the 18th at the Doral Golf and Spa Resort. And when I had heard that Ann Coulter was going to speak at this GOPproud event, the HOMOCON event, and this is their description of it, HOMOCON. It's amazing that we cannot use the word homo, but they can use the word homo in describing themselves. But that's another story for another day. I just had somebody criticize me because I used it in a title of something and said, how dare I use this? And I said, look, they describe themselves in the same way. Now, this is very much like the N-word. There's a great controversy going on right now with Laura Schlesinger over her use of it on the air, describing how blacks use it on a regular basis with no offense to anyone. So there's a double standard that goes on here. But again, that's another thing for another day. So I emailed Joseph Farah and I asked Joe, what's going to happen with all of this? Is Ann still going to speak? Because the decision I was going to make is I could not speak at a WorldNet Daily conference if they had Ann Coulter speaking, especially since Joseph Farah and David Kupelian had come out against these so-called conservatives who are capitulating to the homosexual agenda, especially Coulter, who was speaking at this particular homosexual event. And I was pleasantly surprised when I was working late last night and came to WorldNet Daily site, and there was the article that I'm using this morning says WorldNet Daily dumps Ann Coulter from Miami due to homo conflict. Farah cites her speech to gay event as the reason for it all. And so I dashed off an email to Joseph and commended him for that, and we have to do the same thing. I don't agree with everything Joseph Farah believes on various issues, and he knows that, and I know that. There are some things that we can work together with people even though we don't have full agreement on. But on this particular case, because there is an agenda behind GOPproud, that they really want to see the conservative movement adopt homosexuality, bringing Ann Coulter in is a way of offering legitimacy to their particular movement. Now, Joseph Farah said in all of this, he said that it was a gut-wrenching decision for his team because of their fondness for Coulter as both a person and writer and speaker. And again, it's a disappointment for me as well. Ultimately, as a matter of principle, it would not make sense for us to have Ann speak to a conference about taking America back when she clearly does not recognize that the ideals to be espoused there simply do not include the radical and very unconservative agenda represented by GOProud, Farah said. The drift of the conservative movement to a brand of materialistic libertarianism is one of the main reasons we planned this conference from the beginning. Now, again, Joseph Farah needs to be commended on all this. I'm sure he'll get ostracized by some groups in the conservative movement. We've had this problem within the conservative movement. We've had the fiscal conservatives and the social conservatives. The fiscal conservatives are all about economics and so forth, and of course the social conservatives deal with the issue of abortion and homosexuality and the so-called ethical social issues. You can't separate the two. What is the basis of determining whether or not we can't steal from people in terms of the government? Why is somebody a fiscal conservative? Because the fiscal conservative believes that it is wrong to take money from one group of citizens and to give it to another group of citizens. But based on what? What is the standard for all of that? If it's just a pragmatic reason, then we are lost as a culture. We are certainly lost as a conservative movement. So if you're going to make the point about fiscal conservative politics based upon morality, how wrong it is to do so, the same is true of social conservatives. The reason that social conservatives are against abortion because they believe it takes a human life. That's the reason for it. It's not that we want to deny women the right to do what they want with their own bodies. That isn't the issue here. The issue is that a preborn baby is not a part of a woman's body. It's not an appendage that can be taken. It's not a gallbladder surgery. It is the taking of a human life. Homosexuality, the very definition of marriage, is a God-stated position. There's no idea of marriage with an evolutionary, materialistic worldview. Marriage is defined in terms of a biblical view of man and woman. And so for the conservative movement to distance itself from those two issues, the abortion and the homosexual issue, is to really gut what the conservative movement is all about. Asked by Farah why she was speaking at GOProud, Coulter said, "They hired me to give a speech, so I'm giving a speech. I do it all the time." Farah then asked, "Do you not understand you are legitimizing a group that is fighting for same-sex marriage and open homosexuality in the military, not to mention the idea that sodomy is just an alternate lifestyle?" And Coulter responded, "That's silly. I speak at a lot of groups and do not endorse them. I speak at Harvard, and I certainly don't endorse their view. I've spoken to Democratic groups and liberal Republican groups that love abortion. The main thing I do is speak on college campuses, which is about the equivalent of speaking at an Al-Qaeda conference." Now, I understand what Ann Coulter is saying. If I were to ask to speak at Harvard or to speak at some Democrat group or even a homosexual group, I would do so. But I would go there dealing with my particular issue and laying out why the basic materialistic assumptions of Harvard are in fact wrong, and the basic assumptions of the Democrat Party are wrong, and the basic assumptions of why homosexuality is wrong. I would not go there as an entertainer, which is in fact the way the HOMOCON 2010 is depicting the Ann Coulter speech. They have a poster, and we'll put it up on the site, "The right-wing Judy Garland, Ann Coulter." They're bringing her in there as an entertaining speaker. Someone who, in fact, because she won't say anything critical of homosexuality, it'll become a way as endorsing their particular movement. It's quite different from going to Harvard and being critical of the way Harvard deals with particular issues, or speaking to liberal groups and pointing out their particular faults. Joseph Farah made the right decision, and I believe we as Christians should commend him. So go on WorldNet Daily site and respond to the articles that are up there, and congratulate Joseph Farah for taking a stand for the things of Jesus Christ.
For more related to this topic, check out God versus Socialism, a biblical critique of the New Social Gospel. You will find it at AmericanVision.com.